Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Warwick F1 show. This is the 5th episode of the 6th season, and we are looking at reviewing the Chinese Grand Prix, which was the first sprint weekend of the 2026 season under the new regulation set. And what we have seen is Kimi Antonelli take home his maiden victory at the ripe age of 19 years of age, younger than all the three of us in the studio right now, which says a lot about where we are. We're going to be breaking down the action, talking you through who performed well, who performed below standards, and what we kind of saw about from our kind of second test in terms of seeing what racing looks like under a new regulation set here in 2026. I'm joined by Lucy and Daniel, my regular co-hosts, and we are going to be talking about, firstly, what was our assessment on the first sprint race of the season? Did it match expectations, beat our expectations? How do we find it?
My first reaction to the sprint race this year was I slept right through it. Nothing to do with the quality of the sprint race and everything to do with the fact it was at 3 a.m. But upon watching the highlights, I think it was good. China has always produced, I think, good sprint races. I think the one last year was pretty good as well. And so I'm kind of not surprised that as a circuit it works. It's not like when we go to Singapore when I will be genuinely shocked if that's a good sprint race. But yeah, I think we didn't really know what was going to happen, but I was pleasantly surprised. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, you're right. We have had some banging sprint races around China. Obviously, Hamilton's victory last year, and the year before we had a titanic battle between Sainz, Alonso, and that gaggle for maybe third position, I think it was, because Alonso's tyres were going off, and that sparked a huge battle. But this year we didn't need huge tyre deltas to have great battles in the sprint or the Grand Prix. They just kind of came naturally as a result of energy deployment and team performance, but also clever driving on behalf of the drivers. I'll be honest, I don't remember a whole lot of the sprint race because A, it was at 3 a.m, and B, because once the Grand Prix happened, I tend to overwrite the sprint race, which is an example of retroactive interference if you know psychology. But that's definitely the case with the sprint and Grand Prix because they were similar in the events and also in the quality, in that there were great battles all the way throughout. Ferrari drivers going at it versus Mercedes again for the win, which I don't think will ever get old, seeing Ferrari sweep into the lead at turn 1 every single race of the year. You know what, I'll take it, because the Mercedes are superior and they're giving us a great battle at the moment. I think these regulations are really suited to sprint races.
Yeah, I too tend to merge the sprints and Grand Prix in my brain, but I agree, I will, there's a good chance that every single race this year Ferrari just go 1 and 2 into the first corner, even if they started in 21st and 22nd. And yeah, I will still every time just clap and be really happy about it. It'll never get old.
Yeah, I thought it was a phenomenally fun race, just seeing the cars go side by side over the course of both sprint and the real race. Let's talk through kind of overall, if we had to assign a rating out of 10 for the weekend as a whole, what would we kind of put that down to?
I'm giving it, I've thought about this, probably an 8.5 I think is suitable because qualifying still kind of sucks.
Agreed.
It wasn't as bad as Australia and the 9-10 complex there, but overall seeing the cars, especially some of the drivers on the end of the back straight, Charles Leclerc was losing massive time at the end of that straight because he decided to deploy at other points in the lap, which is kind of not really what you want to see in qualifying. So that was a bit of a letdown, but apart from that, like I said, quality of racing was exquisite. Results at the end of the day were also exquisite. Happiest podium in a very long time, I'd say. So I think an 8.5 is fair.
I would agree. When I think about it, about qualifying as well, the only thing that really made qualifying interesting was the fact that George Russell was on the back foot, and so there were about 10 minutes where I was thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen with that? And I think if you need to rely on Mercedes having reliability woes to make your qualifying session even vaguely interesting, there's probably a problem there. I agree. I mean, during the podium, I don't think anyone could stop crying. I was nearly crying. I'm not even Italian or anything like that, and yet hearing, the Italian national anthem, I was tearing up. And it was a really fun race. It was a it was a really fun sprint, and as well I think I got the sense that, particularly the Ferrari drivers who were just raving about how fun it was, they seemed to be enjoying it, and we want good entertainment, but at the end of the day it's also a sport, and so you want the sports people to be having a good time while they're doing their sport, and I think we got that, and I'm very happy with that, and I won't complain about Williams getting 2 points.
You can't complain about that when we consider how concerned we were at the start of the season when they were missing testing. Points in the second race isn't too shabby, at least compared to some of the other teams who are definitely in the mud at the moment. So let's start by talking about the main story of this weekend, and that was Kimi Antonelli taking home a well-deserved win, and kind of showing us that this isn't going to be George Russell by himself at the front. How excited were we to see that?
I think you're right in that Antonelli seems to have taken a step up, and it kind of reminds me of Oscar Piastri's 2024. They're both in their second season. They both got their first Grand Prix pole position in China in their second season, which is kind of parallels there, and they both won China Grand Prix, but albeit in different years of their careers. But yeah, just in terms of the step up that he's made, it's really impressive to see, given how much of a tricky rookie season he had. I don't think Piastri was quite that far off Norris in his rookie season as Antonelli was off Russell, but it just speaks to the huge leaps and bounds that he's made, probably helped by the fact that he was kind of streamlined through, so he didn't have much time to get used to anything else. So now the fact that he is able to acclimatise to the Formula 1 car pretty quickly, he's not overwriting much, it's just kind of learning and applying without, anything else interfering with that, which I think is really impressive. And also his start was mega for the first time this season. He's had 2 different issues off the start. In Australia, he had no battery. In China sprint, I think he had too much, and it meant that he couldn't spool the turbo properly, which meant he got a bad launch and dropped down to 7th again, as always. But it was perfect on Sunday, perfectly measured. He covered off Russell, actually, which is important, because yes, although the Ferraris got through, the Mercedes had superior race pace, and he could afford to let Hamilton through while he covered off Russell, which I think was really clever.
Yeah, Kimi Antonelli, don't you mean Kimi Räikkönen, as the announcer on the podium called him. But no, in all seriousness, I think, first Grand Prix pole and then converting that pole position to a win. Yeah, like you said, the Mercedes is the dominant car, but George Russell is no slouch, and the Ferraris are always just about there. Even if it's not that they're all fighting each other right until the very last corner, there's always the possibility that if something goes wrong that messes up Mercedes' strategy, or somehow Ferrari have a better strategy, which will never happen, but it is possible, I suppose, that Ferrari could be right there. And I think we all knew, because Antonelli's first season was a little bit tumultuous, but I think we all saw that kind of we do have a very strong racing talent on our hands in Antonelli, who will probably be around for a very long time.
He could be around for 20 years, which is crazy.
Which is wild. And still only be 39, which is ridiculous.
Well over half his life.
But I think, so we saw that in flashes last year, I'm thinking his sprint pole at Miami and his podiums in Canada and in Brazil, but this is the first time I think that I've seen that he can have that consistency and consistently perform, which is what's going to make it very exciting, I think. I think he will be somebody who, even if it's not that he's challenging for a world title, I still think George Russell is the main guy I'd be backing there. But even if he's not doing that, he is making things interesting, and he's maybe making this Mercedes dominance a bit less boring, because ultimately, as well, it's just more fun when you have both drivers on a team when the car is good, doing well. It's why we like it that the Ferrari drivers are having so much fun battling each other, and I think part of the reason why we kind of were so annoyed with the Red Bull second driver thing is that when a car is good, you want both drivers to be able to feel like the car is good. And so I'm very happy with that.
I think having a title battle between teammates would be amazing, and I also think
I don't think Mercedes won that.
no, but I think from our perspective, Mercedes would much rather have a boring championship for the rest of the season. So I don't think what they want is kind of something that we need to be thinking about. I think from my end, I would love to see, because particularly I think it's very clear Merc have the best car. When you look at the time difference between them and the Ferraris in qualifying, and in the race there was a 20-second gap between Antonelli in second and Hamilton in third. That's clearly a sign of Mercedes having comfortably the best car. Now, how much have they turned that down is a different question entirely. I think there could be people who argue that. So I think having two drivers going head-to-head softens that blow. And there's been no doubt that Kimi Antonelli, over the course of his year, just over north of a year now of F1 experience, he's demonstrated pace. That's something we can't deny. It's that consistency and the clumsiness that I think we need to be able to eliminate for us to believe in him as a proper contender. And I think he's got to do that over the course of the next year for us to actually have this discussion going forward.
Yeah, so he was really consistent intra-weekend, you were right, in terms of his pace. Unfortunately, there was that element of clumsiness in the sprint, of course, when he did tag Hadjar, sent the dive bomb, hit his barge board, caused damage for both of them. Hadjar wasn't very happy with that post-race. If you saw in Parc Fermé, he kind of shooed him away when he went over to say sorry, which I can understand, to be honest, because it was incredibly unnecessary with the Mercedes he had. I think Mercedes were probably faster relative to Ferrari than they were in Australia, simply based on the fact that the Ferraris couldn't fight the Mercedes as much. They seemed to be better in terms of deployment, and Antonelli, once he passed Hamilton, could just kind of drive away, and the same with Russell. Once he'd actually fired his tyres up, he was able to get past both Ferraris and clear off, but the Ferraris do seem to have a talent for awakening their tyres at the start of the race and at safety car restarts, which of course makes it so exciting paired with those great launches they get off the line. It's a recipe for battling in the opening laps, which I can't complain can't complain about, especially when Mercedes seem to be as clear as they are for the rest of the race.
Yeah, I mean, I think with this whole, I think we'll have to wait and see in terms of how the kind of who stacks up where in terms of the Mercs. But when you look at the Ferraris, I have to say they're giving us a damn good fight. You know, and I didn't really expect that after seeing qualifying in Australia. I thought this would be, oh no, those aren't gunshots, I promise. But I was kind of pleasantly surprised with them. They are very much, especially at the start of the race, they're very good. Like, you can tell that they light up their tyres. Might be the turbo thing as well, of having, I believe it's a smaller turbo in that car.
Smaller turbo helps, yeah.
So that's helping them at least charge up a little bit quicker relative to the Mercs. And that's giving us more to talk about. Do you think this whole starting thing is a bit of a gimmick, though, at least?
Do you mean that Ferrari have such a good start, or the debates that are still going on about the start?
No, I'm talking about specifically the Ferraris. In terms of the fact that they have this fast start and then slowly trail off once that we hit the middle of the race, let's say.
I mean, maybe. I don't really care.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
It might be a gimmick, but you know, if that gimmick wasn't there, Mercedes would still be winning. We'd just be complaining about how boring it was, including the first laps, that nobody could ever challenge them. This time, at least, we get the illusion that there's some sort of fight, and also, you know, reliability DNFs and things like that are annoying. But you know, we saw in qualifying that that George Russell's Merc had some sort of issue. If that happens in a race, then, you know, combine that with the Ferrari sort of good, like Daniel said, their good sort of tyre warm up and their good start. There is Ferrari having that means that there is just an element of excitement, even if it's just how many laps are they going to stay ahead of Mercedes before they get past, that there wouldn't be if they didn't have that.
I agree. I think if they can gaslight me into thinking they can challenge for first and second place in every race, then I'll take it, because I fall for it every time, gladly. I think there is something to be said about our Mercedes kind of holding back. You kind of mentioned that as well at some point. So no, I don't think the start's a gimmick, but you know now that Mercedes are aware of Ferrari's hand and they've showed it, how much are Mercedes going to respond? Can they respond? And if you're wondering about the motivations of Mercedes holding back some of their performance, it's related to basically something called the ADUO, the Additional Development and Upgrades Opportunity. So after, I think it's Miami, there's going to be an evaluation about whether other teams, other power unit manufacturers, are allowed to put more development into their power unit to catch up Mercedes. And so if Mercedes can kind of show less performance, be like, no, they're not at that threshold. We're not more than 3% more powerful than everyone else. Don't give them that extra development time. That would play into their hands. So that could be a reason why they'd hide something. But for now, and for what we've seen so far, I think it's...
They're doing quite a bad job at hiding it if they're trying to.
But maybe they are hiding it still, and yet they have... I'm sorry, that's really pessimistic of me. I don't think that's the case, but, it's...
I mean, it's certainly something to be thoughtful about.
Yeah,
I think it's a kind of... It's a thing that can occur as a result of the ADUO mechanism, right? Of someone holding back to ensure that the teams behind do not have this development jump or allow this development jump ultimately.
Yeah, and Ferrari challenging them would give the illusion that they are not as clear as maybe they have in hand.
Yeah, compared to if it was, say, a McLaren or something challenging them, in which case that's still a Mercedes power unit.
Exactly, yeah.
It's definitely more proof of competition. This is not us saying this is definitely happening, let's be very clear.
No.
But it's something that is a distinct possibility as a result of the rules.
This is a conversation of people who spend too much time reading regulations.
Correct.
True, it is.
We read too much of this. But overall, very positive signs. And like you were saying, drivers seem to really enjoy the racing. And
I think Leclerc commented that it was fun while he was battling Hamilton. Which
yes, on the radio he did.
And this wasn't at the end of the race, after it was clear that neither of them had DNF'd or crashed into each other. This was mid-battle. He was saying that he's having a fun time, which I think is the most positive radio message the Ferrari engineers have ever heard, possibly since the Michael Schumacher days. But I'm just glad because I'm aware that kind of basically it feels like every F1 driver complains about the cars all the time, but especially with new regulations, when I think I'm still getting to grips with them, I think we'll still need to see whether, like Daniel mentioned with qualifying needs to change. It's a bit stupid. Like it's bordering on ridiculous. But the fact that the F1 drivers are enjoying driving the cars is a positive sign, because it shows that the changes probably need to be adapting things rather than this whole set of regulations is doomed until we can get a new one.
And something Hamilton said post-race was that it's some of the most fun racing he's had in Formula One.
And he's had a long
And
career.
he's been around in Formula One for a long, long time, which I think is really positive for these drivers.
Yeah, when you consider how many eras he's done, even just separate engine regulations, this is his third.
Yeah,
and that's not including all the different builds.
Aero regs as well.
Yeah.
That's something to also think about.
But you could tell it looked fun when they were racing. I mean, you get Leclerc at one point got a switch back on Hamilton on a medium speed corner. Like, what? How do you
do that on medium speed corners?
Yeah, the camera cut angle, and he was alongside Hamilton in the helmet cam, and you're thinking that's just not possible in the 2025 cars. And so I completely understand why it's so fun.
I think we're getting a variety of kind of responses out of it. I think definitely have a lot of the naysayers who I would say are leaning towards the further back end of the grid or stuck in the midfield. But the guys at the front seem to be very happy. I mean, obviously that's natural because their cars are the ones that are close to winning. But do you think it's a case of they're enjoying this so much because they're at the front as well, or do you think the racing is fun across the board?
I mean, for us to watch, the racing is fun. We focus a lot on the front because finally there's at least an illusion of there being a battle at the front. But basically anywhere you looked in the timing charts, there were people near each other most of the time. There were a couple of bits where people were spread out, but there was Colapinto hunting down signs for what he thought was going to be the last point position. It didn't end up being that, but that was really interesting. And Berman admittedly not having a very interesting race for most of it, but there was that really fun battle between the two Hasses and the two Alpines, which, that was beautiful. Sorry.
We'll get onto both of those constructors in a moment.
But if you compare that to previous years, where obviously different drivers have different driving styles, so it probably comes down to that as well. But if you think, even when Red Bull were being very dominant, Verstappen would often comment that, you know, the car didn't feel quite right, or that there were problems in terms of how things were going, or, you know, people in second and third would be saying how they felt like they couldn't challenge for the lead, or we'd be saying how it felt like you could never have any proper battling up, and that's not just those people were coming last and so they were complaining. That was a general across the grid thing. So it might be that the people who are winning are more outwardly positive, but I suspect that in terms of the actual driving of the car, not reliability and things like that, in terms of the actual driving of the car, most drivers are having a more fun time now than they did last year. Aston Martin's notwithstanding.
Good point. Very good clarification. Except Max Verstappen.
Who's just hating every minute of this.
He is 100% a naysayer. He's never said anything other than nay. And frankly, I think I understand why. And maybe it is because he's further towards the back, but I'm not convinced of that. I think Max Verstappen is the kind of person who'd just say whatever he thinks wherever on the grid he is performing.
I think he could be winning by 45 seconds and it'd still be complaining.
Yeah, after qualifying, even if he's on pole by a second, he probably would still complain about it, which is fair enough because it's just not his kind of thing, right? So it is about the individual.
It's on the purist racing side.
He is definitely a purist.
And I also think probably he's now, you know, he's doing a lot more things in like endurance racing. Like he's doing the 24 hours of Nürburgring, I think. Is that the one he's doing? It's one of the German ones.
Yes.
It's either Nürburgring or Hockenheim. I think it's Nürburgring. But like he's doing that, so he has other things as well, which are styles of driving. Which, I mean, given he's chosen to do that alongside his Formula One career, he probably quite likes the feeling of driving a car like that. And so it's probably, you know, when he's got that he likes doing. When F1 is maybe not quite the driving style he likes, he's going to feel it more than if somebody's only doing F1 and has sort of no other racing series that they like how it works more.
Yeah, something he hasn't said, I want to go and drive in Formula E.
So, not yet.
I don't think he ever will, to be honest. Like you said, purist.
But, maybe we should do a Warwick F1 fundraising campaign to see if we can get Max Verstappen to say he'd prefer to go race in Formula E than F1.
There's not enough money in the world to make him say that.
Okay, let's not even pretend that we have the full power to do so. But yeah, let's move on to the teams who kind of followed the Red Bull and the Mercs. And it wasn't the usual suspects. We normally expect it to be two McLarens being there or the Red Bulls being there. No. Because this weekend we saw a Haas and Oliver Behrman finish 5th and a Alpine and Pierre Gasly finishing 6th, which I find more crazy than the Haas result, considering the absolute devastating season Alpine had over the course of 2025. Alpine in 6th is a nosebleed for them.
For sure, yeah, I can't believe that Pierre Gasly is ahead of 2 of last year's 3 championship contenders, right there, in obviously Oscar Piastri and Max Verstappen. But yeah, it was a really fun race for them as well. I mean, I don't know if you saw the midfield mini box that they had going on was crazy. Props to the TV direction for that, because it was actually really well executed, managing to cover both the battles at the front and in the midfield. But yeah, Alpine just seemed to come alive this weekend. They weren't that great in Australia. Where did they finish? 10th, maybe? I think Pierre Gasly got a point. Or
at that point, 2. I was like, oh, wow, this is fantastic for Alpine. They've got a point really early on.
Yeah, and now they've got 9 more, with Franco Colapinto rounding out the points in 10th as well. And what is it? Is it track specific? Is it maybe being able to extract more out of the Mercedes power unit and understanding it a bit more, because they did only just have access to it pre-Australia, so maybe they are now getting more understanding and they're able to maximise it more. But then again, it's a sprint weekend, so maybe they didn't have that learning and it was just a great track for them and their drivers. Obviously, Colapinto was a bit unlucky with that contact with Ocon, which was most certainly Ocon's fault.
And Ocon accepted that it was his fault
100%.
as well.
He took blame on the radio, which is very unlikely.
Seemingly immediately afterwards as well.
Yeah, exactly. Which props to him for that. And Ocon had a dreadful race, but you know, his
was not helped by a 10-second penalty.
Yeah, that too.
10-second penalty to Ocon.
Maybe that's why everyone loves these new rigs.
Maybe. But yeah, from Behrman as well, it was great to see him up there. It kind of reminded me of his P4 in Mexico last year, especially when Hadjar spun in front of him on the opening lap.
Yeah.
And he just kind of avoided the chaos, picked his way through.
It was really impressive.
Did you see how close they were?
I know.
I was surprised he wasn't taken out as well.
Yeah, I mean, Behrman said after the race that he should have gone right instead of left, but to be honest, it didn't really matter because he was able to survive anyway. And that kind of shows Behrman's mindset, I think, in that he's always finding little ways to improve. Maybe he wouldn't have lost so many positions if he'd gone right instead of left, but it was still an incredible reaction speed to avoid Hadjar. And then just the pace that he had was amazing. Second year in a row that Haas drivers finished 5th in the Chinese Grand Prix.
And this time they did it actually without loads of people in front of them getting disqualified.
Getting disqualified, yeah, true.
I've been very impressed with Behrman. Not just this season, but towards the back end of last season as well. I think Haas have obviously I would say definitely their better performing driver over the course of over the course of the partnership. Do you think Haas will have any struggles keeping him beyond the end of the season? Because his performances are really good.
I think probably not right now, because I think Behrman's still very much, Behrman is a Ferrari junior driver. It's how he got his first start in F1, and so I think that Behrman is still very much on the track towards Ferrari.
Yep.
When either, presumably Hamilton, but I suppose it could be Leclerc. I don't really know why it would be, but it could be, hypothetically, leaves Ferrari. Behrman will probably go and fill their seat, and so Ferrari probably want to keep him in a car that they're powering, and he's not going to go to Cadillac.
Yeah.
I think that Haas will be able to keep him unless for whatever reason he leaves the Ferrari Driver Academy, which I don't think he will. I was going to say though, back to Alpine quickly, and then we can get back to Haas. Them doing really well, it reminds me a little bit, because their season last year wasn't quite as abysmal as this. When Haas in 2022, when Magnussen got that P5 at the Bahrain Grand Prix, and that was after their 2021 season, which can really only be described as just an utter mess. And then they got a pole position later in the season, which is wild. But it's reminding me a bit of that, in the sense that just absolutely kind of, it feels like they've come from the complete bottom to suddenly, proper top of the midfield. Fighting really well, fighting with the Haas at the top of the midfield, and comfortably as well. It is not the case that it seems like they're out of place. You mentioned that we would expect the McLarens to be following the Ferraris and Mercs home. We will get to those later, but I think even if they had been there, Alpine would not have dropped massively down the field. I wouldn't have been surprised to see Gasly being able to maybe take it to them, especially now they have a Merc power unit. Because, no offence if there's any, Renault truthers listening to this podcast, but that Renault engine was trash.
It was, yeah, for sure. I think there's no way Alpine would be finishing in 6th with a Renault
They wouldn't be
engine in the back.
finishing.
They probably wouldn't be starting. They wouldn't be starting. They'd join the 4 DNSs that we had for this Grand Prix, which is crazy. What was I going to say? There were 30 seconds in between Behrman and Leclerc. I'd like to think that McLaren will be able to slot into that gap, but nothing's guaranteed,
We've got no evidence of what McLaren can do, really.
We don't. No, you're right. I mean, we saw the sprint, but even that wasn't very encouraging at all, to be honest. I think you mentioned Behrman going elsewhere. I don't think they'll have a problem keeping him, because at the moment it seems like they've built maybe the 4th fastest car in China. So, when you're not in a top team, having the 4th fastest car is fine. You're not going to complain about that. If he can get 5th positions, he's going to stay at Haas. There's no opening at a top seat anywhere, as far as I can tell.
And I don't think they'll be for a year. I mean, it's very contingent on Lewis retiring.
Exactly. I mean, he seems rejuvenated this weekend. Right? It's the happiest I've seen him in a long time.
That timeline's probably been extended now.
Precisely. So, in a few years, maybe the situation will change. But as of right now, I can't see Behrman going anywhere or really wanting to. It's also
he's kind of right now in a position where if there's some sort of chaos at the front and a bit of good luck, he could end up in P3. It would take a lot, but if we had this scenario and then the Ferraris had crashed into each other, Behrman would be in P3.
True, that would have been Haas's first maiden podium in Formula One, which would have been crazy. Yeah, based on this evidence, Haas would look on track for a podium this season. It's going to be tough.
Never thought I'd say that.
No, absolutely.
I mean, we're at a very elementary stage, aren't we? So we don't know how tough.
Yeah, and we have to look at last year as well, right?
Yeah.
5th place in China, no podium. I mean, they had a high of 4th in Mexico, like I said, but I could see it happening if the cards fall his way.
Yeah.
I just want to be excited.
I think
You'll
this
be
is
crying, you'll be bawling your eyes out again if Behrman gets a podium.
I mean, this is definitely an exciting time for him because I think he's got a really good set of momentum at the moment, and hopefully he can capitalise. Let's move on to the other Alpine who also was able to snag a points finish, Colapinto. A lot's been made of him over the course at the end of last season, whether he should have stayed there. He obviously replaced Jack Doohan, and people weren't particularly impressed with his work. Do you think this is good for him to try and build off now? Because a point in an Alpine is something that is a massive improvement off the back of last year.
It's really annoying because I love to see the Alpines do well, especially given they had such a torrid season last year. But I hate to see Flavio Briatore succeed, so this is a real dilemma for me.
It's a moral quandary.
I know, this is a real moral quandary. There was a lot of debate around whether Colapinto should have stayed last season. I think ultimately Alpine, if they wanted to stay within their own junior programme, and they've got about 700 junior drivers, so I don't know why they wouldn't, there wasn't an immediate candidate to replace him. They've now got Alex Dunn, I think, and
yes.
Maybe if they had him last year, that might have been more of a discussion. But I think I don't think this will be Colapinto's peak this season. I don't think this is going to be a one-off and then he's going to be back down in P17 for the rest of the season. And I hope that's not the case. Because I think as well, we saw him battling, we saw him overtaking, we saw him even with the splitting strategies and things like that. And he seemed in his element. It didn't feel like the Colapinto last year who seemed permanently on the verge of spinning out. So I'm hoping that he'll do, well is relative because he can't really do that much worse than the 2025 Alpine, but I'm hoping he'll do well. And I think he will. I think this is a positive sign. But again, this is one race out of, if you're including sprint races, 28 races this season. So that's a...
Well, it just means he's got a lot of time to prove that he can do it again without Ocon's interference this time, I guess. Because he did have floor damage following Ocon's ambitious move on the inside of Turn 1, which I think obviously accounted for some of the loss of time. And he just had a great start as well, Colapinto. He started in 12th. I think he made his way up to, 6th at one point. Obviously, that might have been helped by...
He was in second after the safety car.
He did get up to a high of second, despite the fact that he hadn't pitted, but we can ignore that.
Second.
If there was a red flag, he would have been second on merit.
Exactly.
So, props to him. But that start
Flavio was
was
having
immense.
to frantically reconsider which Alpine he was going to have to ask to crash in order to secure a podium.
Oh man,
That would have been a discussion, wouldn't it?
a crash gate jab.
Oh my
It's
god.
crazy.
In the big funny
So
six.
he's going to get a second lifetime ban from Formula One.
Coming back as an executive advisor now.
Yeah, that'll be it.
It's
Yeah.
he's collecting them like Pokemon. He's trying to get one at every single team.
He'll get another lifetime ban, and then he'll come back as the CEO of Formula One.
Oh yeah,
With
somehow.
his current trajectory, that's what he'll do
He'll worm his way back somehow.
easily.
MBS's success.
Yeah, honestly, just pop into a French court any day of the week and they'll just overwrite it for you. Apparently, Colapinto, impressive. I don't really have much more to say.
Yeah, I think we'll see how it continues with him. But I think this is good signs, and that's kind of what I wanted to see out of him.
Oh, by the way,
Hit me.
Gasly said that they were the third fastest team on track in China. He said that
But is that considering the fact that McLaren just did
So
take their
on-
track?
Yes,
Yeah. So cool.
big
And-
news story.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but I think it is interesting because
Given Haas finished ahead of them.
But I think it's both cars got more
Yeah.
points, and Haas can't say that the same.
And
on their end.
also, both cars would have got more points were it not for Haas.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Gasly said he had no energy at the restart, and Behrman just powered past him, and he couldn't really get him back. So.
Not that I'm complaining. Please don't take my Williams points away from me.
But my point was, given last year, saying at all that they're the third fastest team on track is huge progress.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alpine 1-2 in Brazil this year, I'm calling it.
Oh, okay, right. You're standing on your own there. You're not getting any type of support from me.
We'll see.
We can edit this segment back in after Sao Paulo this year.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
Wow, that's
Daniel,
presupposing
you
that
can
he's going to
think
edit it out now.
Yeah, you can think of that once we get there, Daniel.
Sure, I'll be out.
Let's go and talk about some positive signs. There were a handful of teams who definitely had some pretty bad negative signs too. Let's start with the drivers who just didn't start the race. And there was a whole team decided, you know what, this car's not going to work for the start. And that was McLaren, who I feel have very much disappointed me relative to expectations this season. Not making the track for the race. Is this cause of concern?
I mean, what is actually going on? Genuinely. I mean, we've talked about Haas's performances glowingly, but they are only 1 point behind McLaren. And given that McLaren are the reigning Constructors' champions, Haas have not become that good. Sorry, Haas, but it's true. I mean, Piastri is the first driver since Bruce McLaren back in the early 60s to DNS 2 races in a row that he qualified for, which is wild. And, you know, he said that it's been a while since he's got to watch 2 F1 races, but he'd much rather be competing in them. And, you know, it really shows something when McLaren managed to start both their cars for the sprint, and we thought that was impressive. It's pretty insane, because, I mean, they DNS'd, which also means they did not finish. Compare that to Aston Martin have more racing laps under their belt than McLaren do.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
No.
Yeah.
Yep,
genuinely.
Wow.
And Cadillac have had by having both cars finish the Chinese Grand Prix, when you don't count sprints, they have had both cars finish the full race before Aston Martin, Audi, Red Bull and McLaren. And that's Red Bull and McLaren whose drivers were fighting for the championship last year. You know, regulations can throw teams for the loop, kind of, you know, especially engine regulations. I don't think any of the McLaren drivers signed up for this.
I've seen enough. McLaren are washed.
No, I'm joking. Wonders.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, I was already a hater of the colour orange, so this is just...
I just don't like the livery design. I like the colour, but not the design. I think
I agree.
The strike on the side, it just doesn't... When you're watching it from like, diagonally, looking at the rear of the car, it's so ugly. It doesn't align.
Fortunately, we don't do that very much, because we don't see much of them.
Yeah, they're better.
Not recently, thank goodness for that. Yeah, we see them in the garage, and it actually looks decent from head on, but that's
their secret plan.
That's all we see.
All those sponsors are so annoyed right now.
Yeah, that's why they've got all their sponsors on the front wing, because we only ever see the front when they're in the garage and never racing.
Yeah.
Or we don't even see that, because they just get their mechanics to form like a human shield.
Body block it.
Like, I bet the sponsors aren't happy when they do that.
But what are you trying to hide? No one's trying to copy you.
Yeah, that's a good point. What was I going to say about McLaren?
We were talking about how disappointing.
I said they were washed, didn't I?
They were washed. They actually washed.
I said before that it was quite confusing that McLaren seemed to have this pace deficit to Mercedes, given their ability to outperform them in the recent years. I mean, there's even a bit. I was looking through the technical regulations, as I do.
You need to rename this podcast to "I was looking through this in the technical regulations."
Yeah, and I found something really funny, which is that the FIA defines a works team as the team that uses that power unit that came highest in the championship N-2 years ago. So it was 2024 basically.
So McLaren are currently the Mercedes Power Works team and will also be next year.
That's what I'm getting at, is that it's presupposed by the FIA that the team that finishes highest of that power unit's customer teams should be the manufacturer. of that power unit, and yet it wasn't for so many years, or won't be for this year and next year, right? It does say in special circumstances they can change it, so they probably changed it because it is Mercedes HPP who supply the powertrains. But I just think it's really funny, and probably testament to Mercedes' struggles in the ground effect era, that McLaren, if the special circumstances didn't exist, they would be deemed the Mercedes Works team. And the fact that that's reversed so much for this season did really confuse me. Their lack of pace was upsetting, because I think going into this season I'd have probably said McLaren have the best driver lineup on the grid. That's probably switched to Ferrari now, in my perspective, given what we've seen. And so I think it's a real shame that they're not up there, but it's a real shame that they're not even starting the race. And I hope this doesn't have ramifications in that Mercedes look at that power unit, they go, yeah, there are some real reliability concerns here, we need to change this, and then they use that as a gateway to introduce performance on their power unit, because that's something they can do and has happened before in Formula One.
Lots of times, yeah.
So I hope that unreliability...
It's the most easily exploitable loophole that's ever been found.
It is, absolutely.
And it's very difficult to close, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I feel it's a very difficult one to monitor and to kind of police.
Yeah, because how do you measure the performance of the power unit objectively from one to the other? So I hope that doesn't happen, but it probably is grounds to. But yeah,
McLaren are taking papaya rules so seriously. If one driver doesn't start the race, the other one also can't.
You say that as a joke. I saw people seriously thinking that on X, and I'm just like, what's going on, people? Come on.
Yeah.
So please don't take any of our word as law.
Yeah, it should
We just read FIA technical documents.
That's
what we're doing.
We just love reading. But yeah, I think this is definite cause for concern, because I also think this will impact development for them as well. Just having racing laps is so important, and I think they've had, like you mentioned, the fact they've got less than Aston, and Aston have the catalogue of problems that they do. That's a testament to how much this has really affected them, and particularly Piastri essentially had a sprint race worth of racing.
Sprint race and a couple qualies.
Exactly.
And Piastri has some of the best racecraft on the grid. So I want to see that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm annoyed that I would like we said, we think McLaren will still ahead of Alpine and Haas. It'd be nice to actually get some confirmation of that at some point.
I think as the other thing is, even if we did see them race, are they just not going to be in no man's land? That's my kind of thing.
Yeah, they probably would have been in China.
Which is kind of what I was expecting, right? But they weren't the only teams who've just struggled with DNFs, right? There was another team who also struggled with DNFs, and that was Red Bull with Verstappen. A race where he failed to finish. Feels like quite a while since that's happened.
Do you want me to bring up my other statistic about Red Bull? Because I have all of my statistics. Is that, as everyone knows, Red Bull has the Red Bull Junior team as well. RB.
Yes.
Visa Cash App Racing Bulls, as they used to be known.
We'll go for the full name.
So you expect then that Red Bull will outperform RB. Currently, Red Bull and RB have the same points total in the Constructors' Championship.
Right.
Crazy.
And admittedly, that's very much not down to the performance of the drivers. Hadjar was running really well in Australia before his engine gave up. Verstappen was miserable but performing well in China until his engine gave up. I suspect next race, one of them will be performing well and then their engine will give up. It's kind of very much nothing. Red Bull have finally fixed their second driver problem, it feels like, and then they've broken their car.
At what cost have they resolved?
At what cost? I've seen people who say, no, they haven't solved the second driver curse, they've just made it apply to both drivers. It is it's very similar to McLaren, maybe even more with Red Bull, because, it was only 3 years ago that Red Bull won all but one race in the season in 2023. That's not very long ago, and so everyone has their own team preferences and favourites, and it is fun to see a shake-up of the grid, but you never want to see a team have such a sharp fall from grace like that. You kind of, you want it to be mixed up for them to still be in the fight, especially when they've got a new driver coming in as well, who I would feel a bit sorry for, because especially when a team's been really dominant, because it's like, oh my gosh, you've been watching this team that's been so dominant for so long, and then you join and they immediately start doing badly.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Racing Bulls having the same points total. Are we going to see Racing Bulls as the Red Bull Power Unit Works team in 2028.
I know what, I doubt it.
We'll see. You never know. We got Japan up next, so Verstappen's definitely winning that one.
Yeah, of course.
I'm submitting my predictions already.
Fair enough. But yeah,
just a beast around that
definite
track.
cause for concern there. The last thing I want to touch on is Aston. Do we think that they actually have a safety issue now? Because Alonso retired off the back of having vibrations.
He retired off the back of having vibrations, and he was also like driving. I can't remember, down the straight, like
Without
the
his
long
heart,
straight,
yeah.
like leaning on it rather than like holding the gears. Yes, I mean the FIA. I don't think will intervene because they've never done that before, and they kind of operate on the principle of if you're breathing, you're probably fine. But
and then we've raced in Qatar, and that was that
was God. But in some ways, Aston Martin are bringing an upgrades package. I think it might be to Miami.
Yes.
To Miami, and they've basically gone, if that doesn't solve it, then we're just doomed for this whole set of regulations. They do have...
Which says so much.
But they do at least now have time after Japan. There is 5 weeks without a race for Aston Martin to get their car to be... To at the very least stop being an active safety issue. And so I am hopeful, also because of all the work they have put into it for the drivers, for, you know... people were promised 22 cars on the grid, and it feels like there probably won't be 22 cars on the grid for the entirety of this season at this rate. But it's so the time has at least given them a break post Japan to try and fix this with that 5 week gap. But I am not. They will still be very far towards the back even if they do get that sorted.
Yeah, Alonso seems really frustrated. Not so much outwardly in the media yet. We're heading to Japan next. Who knows what he'll say on Honda's home territory, like he did back in the day.
The engine feels good, much
slower than before.
Say it all together. I think. What was I going to say? Alonso, we saw him waving to Perez's Cadillac on the straight as it just flew past. I think he was driving with no hands. I think he fully took his hands off the steering wheel at one point on the back straight.
And that's Cadillac, who are in their second race.
Exactly, yeah, and yet finishing with both cars. Yeah. Aston Martin haven't finished with one car yet. Yeah. I think he said he lost feeling in his hands at one point during the race, so it is definitely a safety issue. But I believe the FIA will just leave it to Aston Martin to rule.
To self-police.
Yeah, because they're not in the points anyway, so they're not like, stay out there, we want to get those points, we're going to put you through hell in order to get them. They're not in the points, so it's not really worth it.
Yep.
And there were no points on the board.
They do at least seem to be, I mean, not really erring on the side of caution, because if they were erring properly on the side of caution, they wouldn't be driving. But they are erring more on the side of caution than they could do. They could be very much just sort of like, just drive until the car gives up, and they are not doing that, which is...
I mean,
good on them, I think.
They did for Stroll, but it was 9 laps.
Yeah.
No one was surprised when Stroll just parked it up in turn 1.
But to be honest, I think it'll come to the point where we just will stop talking about... We'll either talk about them because their car will be a car, I think is the most positive thing I can say about it, or we just will stop bringing them up because they just won't improve. And yeah, it's disappointing. I think they will also be disappointed given how well the Mercedes power unit seem to be doing, that they've decided to leave now. But yeah, they're disappointing but not surprising. I wasn't expecting a massive shift from Australia, and we didn't get that. So
yeah, we'll see if or when they fix it up. Let's go on to our predictions quickly, and we'll go round out the show. I'm going to go through both Harvey's and Callum's first, because they are not here with us. Harvey predicted a Lewis Hamilton sprint win, which didn't happen. He predicted a top 5 of Leclerc, George Russell, Verstappen, Hadjar, then Piastri. So I think he gets 3 points with George Russell, and that's about it. For his DNF, he put Arvid Lindblad, who did...
Finished in 12th?
Yes, he finished outside the points. And his random prediction was Antonelli and Hamilton crashing out at turn 1, and that did not happen. So 3 points for Harvey. Callum's predictions was a sprint win for Antonelli and a race win for George Russell, so got that the wrong way around, so 1 point for Russell being in first. He also put Leclerc in second, Antonelli in third, so Leclerc gives him a point.
No, because Leclerc was in fourth.
Leclerc, good point, yeah, sorry. Ugh. Nearly messed up there.
Stop trying to give people points they haven't earned.
Yeah, well, you've got to be fair enough. You put Verstappen in 4th and Hadjar in 5th. Neither of which happened.
No.
DNF was Perez. Perez finished in his Cadillac, and a McLaren was not in the top 8, but he specified they finish. Now these drivers did not start, so he does not get points because he added that caveat.
Yeah, I feel like he could have got away with it.
He would have got away with it.
He could have just said either they both DNF or they finished not in the top 8.
Yeah, then if they're not in the top 8, that's random enough for me.
But then would we be having this debate about whether a DNS counts as a DNF?
Yeah, we don't have to have that discussion. That's crazy to think about, so only 1 point for Callum there. Lucy, do you want to go through yours first?
Yeah, so I said sprint win Leclerc didn't happen. I don't really know why I predicted that. I made this in like 3 minutes, so I'm sorry. I said Russell P1 did not happen, but he did come P2, so that's a point. Leclerc P2, no. P4, so that's too far away. Hamilton P3, so I get 3 points for that. Bang on with that. Antonelli, I said he was P4. That did not happen. And Verstappen P5 also did not happen. My random prediction was that we have the same top 5 in the sprint and in the race, not necessarily the same order. I completely screwed myself over with that before the race even started because Lando Norris came 5th in the sprint race and, well, we all saw what happened there, so...
Didn't even start.
At least then, I wasn't, waiting on tenterhooks for the whole race or anything. And I said that Liam Lawson was going to DNF, and he did not. He finished, I believe, not in the points. He was classified at least.
I think he was in the points. I think
Was
he
he?
was 7th, I want to say.
Oh yeah, he was in the points.
Yeah, he was. It was a decent showing. 7th position.
I think the RB is a good car.
Oh yeah.
So,
It is.
So
yeah.
that
We
is
saw that
doesn't
from
surprise me.
Lindblad as well. Drivable as it always
Yes.
is with
Oh,
that team.
Sorry, Liam. I'm not giving you enough
Put some
credit.
respect on his
In my
name.
defence, I did not notice you were there for the entirety of the race.
Yeah, tough. But that is a decent point to... Well, when I say decent, it's 4 points.
It's better than usual.
Yeah, at least it's not 0. Daniel, talk me through yours.
If I have to, I put sprint win Hamilton, which was looking on at one point. I think he was in the lead of the sprint for a while, but didn't come in. P1 Leclerc, no. P2 Hamilton, so that's a point.
Yeah.
P3 I put Russell, which is
So a point.
another point. P4 I put Antonelli because I was underestimating him, like you did, Lucy.
Yeah.
And I also put Verstappen P5, like you did, and he DNF'd. My random prediction was that only 2 tyre compounds will be used at the start, and 1 will not be used at all. And also, like your prediction, Lucy, this was over before the lights even went out because I saw that Red Bull decided to screw me over by starting both their cars on the soft tyre when everyone else was either on the medium or the hard, which was great. And my DNF, which didn't come in either, like Callum, was Perez.
So that's 2 points there if I've got that right. I'm
This is
about to knock this out of the park, so listen closely.
Okay.
Actually, I tell her... No, I tell her... I said George Russell wins the sprint, which is 3.
Unfortunately.
I said George Russell finishes in first, which
That's
didn't happen. 1. Antonelli in second, another 1. Put Hamilton in third.
Oh.
3. I put Leclerc in fourth. 3.
Another 3.
And then I put Bortoletti in fifth. I knew there was going to be some random
Wrong B.
one. But but it was wrong.
I was
B.
listening to the podcast and I can't remember who was specifically said, if I were to pick like a midfield driver,
That
I
was
would
me.
go for Bear. Was it
Yeah,
Can I get a
he
sympathy
said-
half point?
No.
Okay.
You
11
might-
points! You don't need 11 points.
Oh, it's not 11 points.
Oh,
My
you
My DNF was Fernando Alonso.
which
What?
is totally against the rules.
Yeah, we
anyway.
clarified that.
I made
From
the rules
here on,
until...
from here on in, no Aston Martin
Correct.
DNFs until they get their act
Yeah,
together.
correct.
No, he's not allowed to go for Aston Martin. We've still got one entitled to us because...
No, you did
You
one
went-
We
last
went for
week.
it last week.
I didn't do it from the first week.
Yeah,
though.
because you forgot.
I still didn't do it. I still didn't do it.
Sake.
What is this? 2 races in and you've not targeted Lindblad once?
Because maybe respect for Lindblad. I think he's actually decent.
You had 5 potential rookies to respect last year and you chose none of them.
Yes, correct. But I mean, I could share out the disrespect easily. It's like equal. It's like equality.
You need
because-
someone to do a mid-season driver change so that then
Yes.
you'll feel better.
Yes. My random was one of the Astons are classified, and that did not happen. So, but it's a very nice total actually of 14, which
What?
That's ridiculous.
4 times 3 plus another 2.
10 points more than me.
We'll take it. Easy claps. But that brings us to the end of this episode of the Warwick F1 Show. I want to thank my two guests, Lucy and Daniel, for coming along for the ride. And we'll be back at some point next week to preview the Japanese Grand Prix. Admittedly not in the studio because it's going to be the Easter break. But we'll see you in the next episode.